Hey guys, we're going to be talking about motivation and emotion today. So this is going to be two chapters. A lot of information, but I'm really going to just cover the things that are going to be on the AP test. And so let's start with motivation first. And the definition for motivation is the need or desire that serves to energize behavior and direct it towards a goal. Okay, so notice the two words that are big here in this definition: energy, energize, and direction. So if you have one of those but not the other, you're not going to have much motivation. So let's say that your room is really, really messy and you need to clean it, and you have all the energy in the world, you just have like no direction. And so you're probably going to be ending up like in your closet and then finding like old trophies and old pictures and sitting in a big pile of mess, and you're reminiscing about the good old times. Or let's say that you have no energy, but you have all this direction. So you're like, I'm going to clean my room today, but no energy to do it. Probably going to fall asleep on your big pile of clothes that you've been meaning to fold. So you need energy and direction for some sort of motivation towards a goal. Okay, so there are 5 perspectives of what motivate us, and you're going to find these in different goals. Some motivation, some theories of motivation work better than others, but the AP test always tests you on the differences between these theories. Okay, so one theory of motivation, what motivates us, is our instincts. Humans don't have too many instincts. Animals, this really fits a lot with them. Birds fly south for the winter, and polar bears, when they're hiding from their prey, will cover their nose with their paw to hide their black nose, so they kind of blend in with the snow. They've never seen themselves in a mirror. They have no idea that they have a black nose, but instinctually they do this. So think about the things that people and animals do to keep themselves alive and to procreate. And if that's their goal, then it's going to fit under the instinct theory of motivation. Another one is a drive reduction theory, that we have this, we have certain drives, and our goal, our motivation is to reduce certain feelings that we have. So let's say that you are, but it's like a Goldilocks thing, not too much, not too little. So let's say that you're hungry, and you are motivated to eat to reduce the feeling of hunger, but you're not motivated to like eat yourself to death. You're not going to do it too much. You're not going to do it too little to where you're still hungry. You're going to do it just right. You're trying to find something called homeostasis. I have a picture from class, if I can find it. Homeostasis. It's a good balance. That you are motivated, like let's say that you are cold, you're motivated to put like a jacket on or a blanket, but you're not motivated to like throw yourself in a fire to warm up. So it's just enough. Arousal theory is kind of what motivates us. We are motivated to reach a level of some sort of arousal, some sort of, when we're talking about our nervous system, we have, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. We're motivated by the arousal theory to get some sort of sympathetic nervous system response, to get our heart beating, to get the blood flowing. It's why people jump out of airplanes and, rock climb. It's the reason that some people do drugs and speed. It's to get some sort of level of arousal. Of course, there's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we're going to talk about that on the next slide more in depth. But we're motivated to move up this hierarchy, and we'll get to that in a little bit. And then the incentive theory is a huge level of motivation. It's the reason that people go to work. There's some sort of incentive, and it can be an intrinsic incentive or an extrinsic incentive. And so an extrinsic incentive would be like a paycheck. It would be, the approval of our peers. It's something outside of us. Intrinsic motivation, if I can find my picture of it, it is because the love of doing it. Why are you motivated to read? Do you enjoy reading? It gives you intrinsic motivation. Or are you extrinsically motivated because you're going to be, tested on the reading material later? So most behaviors that we do, most things that we do, we're typically motivated by the incentive theory. But there are some things that are motivated by, arousal or hierarchy or drive reduction or even instinctual motives as well. So I kind of mentioned Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and here it is on the screen. So everyone starts at the very bottom of the pyramid, and we need to, we talk about, let me go this way. We need to talk about moving up the pyramid. And so we have physiological needs that we need to satisfy first before anything. We need to have food and water, and we need to stay alive. Once we have those met, then we move on to safety needs. We need to feel safe and secure. And then we move up to love, belongingness, and then our own self-esteem. And when we've reached all of those, then we can be self-actualized. And that's the need to be one's best self and to live to our own potential. So Maslow said that all these needs are not created equal. We have to have physiological needs first before we have self-esteem. We're not going to be too worried. People that are homeless are not too worried about how they look and oh, does so-and-so like me? No, because they need to really fulfill these physiological and safety needs first before they can move on to higher goals. Okay, and we are driven to satisfy the lower level needs first before we move up. Okay, so there's a little bit on hunger on the AP exam. I will go back to this. Hunger does come from our stomach, but there are people without stomachs, and they've had stomach cancer and they've had to have their stomach removed. So their esophagus is connected directly to their intestines, and they still feel hungry. They have no stomach, yet they still feel hungry. So where does hunger come from? It comes from, we talked about the hypothalamus when we talked about the brain. Remember the 4 F's: food, flight, fight, and fornication. Well, one of those is food. So hunger comes from hypothalamus. Glucose, which is like our blood sugar. When we're hungry, if we're low on blood sugar, we feel like we need a quick snack if we get a little shaky. And then orexin is also in our brain, and it increases hunger. And so it's not just hunger, it's not just in our stomach, it's also in our brains as well. Speaking of our brains, we just talked about the hypothalamus. There are 2 parts of the hypothalamus. There is the lateral hypothalamus and the ventromedial. So I want you to think of a hypothalamus like a football. And the 2 ends of the football are the lateral hypothalamus. So there's 2 parts. And then the middle of the football is the ventromedial. So there's 3 sections, but the end 2 sections are both the lateral hypothalamus. And the middle section is the ventromedial hypothalamus. So the lateral hypothalamus is located on both sides of the hypothalamus. When you stimulate it with an electrode or whatever, it makes you feel hungry. So it is active when you are feeling hungry. So here's the thing. What if we were to remove that part of your brain? We remove the part that makes you feel hungry. It means you'll never feel hungry again. And it's very possible. They haven't really done this, and they haven't done it with people. But if they were to remove the lateral hypothalamus of an animal and put it back in the wild, that animal would starve to death because it would never feel hungry again, and it would never eat. And so if it was to be lesion destroyed, you would never feel hungry again. You would starve to death. It's very possible that people that suffer from eating disorders like anorexia or bulimia have something wrong with their lateral hypothalamus if they're never feeling hungry. The ventromedial hypothalamus, that's going to be in the middle of the hypothalamus. It's the inside of it. And when stimulated with an electrode, it makes you feel full. It makes you feel full. It makes you feel satisfied at the end of a meal. So what if we were to remove it? What if we were to take it out? You would never feel full again. So this mouse right here, you see that it has had its ventromedial hypothalamus lesioned. It's been destroyed. And so the fat rat, ate and ate and ate and ate and ate because it never felt full. It never felt satisfied. So it will eat itself to death if given a limitless supply of food. Of course, hunger is also psychological. part of knowing when to eat is the memory of our last meal. There's people that have very poor memory, whether it be Alzheimer's or something else, and either they rarely ever eat because they don't remember to eat. It's not that they're not hungry, or they eat all the time and they become overweight because they don't remember when they ate last, and so they feel hungry all the time because they don't remember their last meal. And of course, taste preference. Some people, are picky eaters and some people are not picky eaters. But then there's also external incentives. Some people are triggered by eating more of the presence of food than by hunger. Think of the last time that you were bored and how often you visited the fridge over and over and over again and just, staring at the pantry. It's just the presence of food makes you hungry without actually being hungry. Okay, so here are some just pictures of different foods, from dog to mice wine, to Rocky Mountain oysters, which is also called bull testicles, and fried frog legs. So this is just taste preferences on different cultures. We're going to talk about anorexia and bulimia, if you're eating disorders. Of course, anorexia, you either don't eat or there's extreme exercise, and bulimia is marked by binging food and then purging it, whether it be by vomiting or by taking laxatives. We'll talk about sexual motivation later. Okay. Let's talk more about
no, she just quit showing us.
Okay, so I mentioned earlier about the whole idea versus intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic was internal enjoyment and satisfaction, while extrinsic is some sort of outside reward, whether that be money or peer approval, stickers, even for answering correct questions, whatever. So intrinsic works better in the long run. If you are just doing a job for extrinsic motivation, you will do it, you'll do it for not as much enjoyment, and you won't do it in the same way with the same heart and passion as intrinsic motivation. Okay, so speaking of work motivation and doing something for a paycheck versus like actual love, I don't know where this fits anywhere else besides talking about what type of management you are working for in the workforce, whether your manager is like a theory X, using theory X management, or theory Y management. Theory X here you see as they're authoritarian, they're repressive, tight control. Basically, it's their way or the highway, and like they don't want to hear any other competing ideas. It is you don't want to have this type of boss. This boss is not up for creativity. They're up for people that are submissive to their will. So I think of theory X, like you do not want it. While theory Y, it's all about you. Why for you? So they're more of working for they're empowering their workforce. They're letting them coming up with ideas. It's completely developing over time of what type of workforce that they are trying to motivate and trying to have achievement, that they are continuous growth, and so forth and so on. So theory Y, it's all about you. That's the type of boss you want to work for. Okay, so we're done with motivation. Let's talk about emotion. And so when we talk about emotion, emotions are pretty universal. There are several emotions that are found in every single culture. Even blind people that have never seen a face before will experience the same type of emotion, facial expression that is universal. So emotion is not just facial expressions, it's a response to the whole organism, involving some sort of physiological, body change, expressive behavior, so that's going to be like a face, and then a conscious experience, like some sort of mental experience. So psychologist asks, does your heart pound because you're afraid, or are you afraid because your heart is pounding? And there's three responses to this question, and the jury's kind of still up. We don't really know. It's their theories. They're not facts on their theories. So let's look at the three theories. First theory is the James-Lange Theory. And if you look at the picture underneath, it says there's the sight of the oncoming car. Then your heart pounds. And then you have the emotion of fear. So the James-Lange Theory, brought to you by William James and Carl Lang. William James, we talked about earlier, he was the one that wrote the first psychology textbook. So this theory is a little old. We feel emotion because of biological changes caused by stress. And so we have a biological response first, and then the emotion comes after. Our body changes, and then our body recognizes the feeling. So tears flow, we recognize tears flowing, and then we become sad. Our body grins and we're filled with joy, and then we feel happiness. And so if there's some sort of biological change, some sort of physical change in our body, and then we experience emotion. The second theory is the Canon Bard theory. It's saying that they happen at the same time, that the heart pounding and the fear is happening at the exact same time. And this is brought to you by Walter Canon, Philip Bard. And they said emotion arousing stimuli trigger both a physiological response and an emotion at the same time. Most researchers agree with this one, but once again, it's just a theory. It's not something like, yes, this is a fact. And so most researchers agree that they happen at the same time. But then there's also the Schlachter two-factor theory. So notice that this has a different box accompanying it. It is saying that you see the sight of the oncoming car, your heart beats first, your brain labels it, and then you experience the emotion. This is very similar to the James-Lange Theory. Very similar to the James-Lange Theory, except the difference is the brain is actually has a role here. And so the James-Lange Theory said our heart pounds and then we experience fear. This one is saying our heart pounds and we experience fear afterwards, but with the heart pounding, the brain is making a cognitive label of the heart is pounding because I'm afraid, and then you experience fear. So this is the only one that the brain is involved. This is, you think, why don't most researchers agree with this one? There's a lot of primal emotions that you're not necessarily thinking about the emotion that you're experiencing until after. It's possible that you experience disgust immediately without thinking what is the smell? The smell is revolting. I'm experiencing disgust. There are complex emotions that, of course, the brain is involved. Love, indecision, and the feeling of depression, but fear, disgust, anger, those are primal emotions. Animals experiences those emotions, but think about other emotions that animals don't necessarily experience. That's higher level brain functioning, and the Schlachter 2 factor has a lot of depth to it. Okay. Let's talk about the physical part of emotion. So the autonomic nervous system, we've talked about the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. The arousal is the sympathetic, while the calming is the parasympathetic. And so usually we perform our best when our arousal is moderate. And so you see this chart here, this little graph. And basically, if your level of arousal is very, very low, the quality of your performance is going to be low as well. If you're sleep or extremely bored that you're nodding off, you're not going to do so well on that test. But if your level of arousal is really high, once again, you're not going to do so well on that test because you're experiencing you're probably having a panic attack. You need to be somewhere in the middle of stressed before to have the best optimal level of performance. Of course, the level of arousal is different tasks. You have a different optimal level. For difficult tasks, let's say you're doing brain surgery or you're diffusing a bomb, your level of arousal needs to be much lower than in the middle. It needs to be on the lower end. But for easy tasks like holding a baby is not a difficult task. Anyone can hold a baby, but you probably need to have a little bit of stress and not so much like carelessness, because you have to support their head and you got to support their back and you got to make sure that you're holding them tightly, because if you're just like really calm and relaxed, you could drop the baby. So you need to have a little bit of stress when holding a baby, but you need to have very little stress, like almost next to nothing stress when you're diffusing a bomb, to do the best. There's a polygraph, but polygraph tests are never really mentioned on the AP exam. Nonverbal communication, there's a lot of what we say that's nonverbal, whether it's our tone of voice, our gesture, our posture, facial expressions. Very little of what we say is actually verbal. You can detect motions in the face. There's nonverbal gestures that also convey emotion and convey meaning. So, thumbs up here in the United States means good job or yay, or, I'm with you. But thumbs up in Australia has a completely different meaning. This is okay. I'm doing okay here, but it could mean a little bit more in Brazil. This piece, victory, is all over the world, but if you flip it, it becomes the middle finger in the United Kingdom. So, you have to be aware. You can't just throw out hand signals no matter where you are. You have to be culturally aware of what you're representing emotionally. These are pictures of emotions that are universal. The following are trying to identify anger, contempt, disgust, fear, happiness, sadness, surprise. This is happiness. This one is hard to define, but I would either say that's contempt or sadness, but it's kind of hard. This one is anger, surprise, disgust. This is probably contempt. The other one was probably anger. That's surprise as well, or fear. No, that's fear. And here you go. There's the answer. So you can go back and test to see if whether I was right or wrong, or whether you were right or wrong. There are 10 basic emotions: joy, happiness, interest and excitement, surprise, sadness, anger, disgust, contempt, fear, shame, and guilt. Notice, like love is not on here. It's not a basic emotion. It's a very complex emotion. But they say that love is a combination of both joy, happiness, and interest and excitement. Both of those, 1 and 2 combined is love. Fear is good. Fear protects us. We talked about fear and learning fear with classical conditioning. Baby Albert and the metal rod and the rat. Anger is good. Emotional release of anger or of sadness really is called catharsis. And the catharsis hypothesis says releasing aggressive energy, punching a wall or something, through action or fantasy, release aggressive urges. But the hypothesis is just temporarily. It can also lead to more hostility. So this is just like a temporary feeling of okay and a feeling of just like, it's good to get it out. But it's not good for long cures of hostility. So how do you deal with anger? You wait, you calm down, you rehearse your reasons for anger. Why are you really upset? Is it really because of this, or is it something deep down? And for happiness, who would have thought that happy people are happier with their lives? Report decisions more easily, perceive the world as safer. When you feel good, you're more likely to do good. And more money does not necessarily equal more happiness. Here are some terms. I'll give you a second to look at those and write them down. Adaptation level phenomenon. Our tendency to judge various stimuli relative to those that we've previously experienced, whether that be happiness, but also could be climate. I think cold is anything below 70 because I live in Texas. But, up in Michigan or up in New York, 70 is probably a heat wave because of what they are judging that stimuli relative to experiences that they've had. So, their cold and hot is going to be different than my cold and hot because we've had different levels of cold and hot. Same thing about grades. Someone that's had previous stimulus of having A's all the time and they get a B, they're going to judge that a whole lot differently than someone who's getting F's all the time and then gets a B. Same stimuli as the B, but you're going to, what you've been adapted to is going to change your experience. Same thing with happiness. Someone that's happy all the time might have a little bit of sadness and they think that's awful, but someone that's sad all the time has a little bit less sadness. That might experience much more happier than the person who's happy all the time. And relative deprivation. As we climb the ladder of success, we compare ourselves with peers who are at or above our current level. We do not compare ourselves with someone that's so far above you. Think of the last time you played like Kahoot in class. If you were, in 5th or 6th place, you were not all that concerned with who was in first. You were concerned with who was right above you, who's in 4th place, who's in 3rd place. That's who you were trying to get to. Whoever is in second to last place, they're not concerned with who's in 1st place. They're concerned with who's right next to them, and that's who they compare themselves to. And this is what research says that happiness is about and what happiness is not about. So the column on the left is what researchers have found that people tend to be happy about and have, what influences happiness. But things that don't influence happiness is, age. Age doesn't change your level of happiness, your physical attractiveness, whether you have children or not, your education levels, and gender. But things that do affect your happiness are, are you sleeping well? Are you exercising? Having a meaningful faith, having work that engage skills that they're good at, having close friendships and a satisfying marriage, having high self-esteem, being optimistic, and so forth and so on. Okay, so that is motivation and emotion. Hopefully you took some good notes. If you have any questions, leave a message on this video, on Google Classroom, or through Remind. Otherwise, I will see you in class. Bye.